So some of you may or may not have been following free agency and what the Lions have been doing, but one thing is for sure, no one is ever happy with anything and everything is a nightmare and everything's melting down according to Lions fans online. Because free agency for the past couple of years for the Lions has been marked by a couple of things, notably the relative inaction, because the Lions don't spend big on free agents, and that is causing like almost a full-blown civil war on Lions Twitter about whether or not Brad Holmes is good at his job. And I know that Twitter isn't exactly representative of most Lions fans. Like most of you on here that I've interacted with are fairly rational and level-headed, and you like don't freak out over dumb things. But it is still worth noting that there is a subsection of the Lions fan base that is very, very mad about what the Lions have done or not done in free agency so far, how they feel about the roster, and they do at least bring up some valid concerns about where the Lions roster stands at this point. So that's what we're here to do today, is discuss what the Lions did in free agency and whether or not it's enough to get them back to division champion contender status in general, and whether or not the Lions are building this thing properly. But before we get into that, be sure to hit like, hit subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you don't miss any future uploads. I know I've been gone for a couple of weeks. That's my bad, but we're going to get back to weekly content leading up to the draft here. We got a lot to talk about before the draft, so make sure you have the notification bell checked so you don't miss any future uploads. And let's go ahead and get into it. So to start off with, we have to start with the moves the Lions actually did make, and for that, we're just going to rattle through all the names very quickly because, I mean, these happened a couple weeks ago. I'm not going to go super deep into things. We got to talk more about the state of the roster, but I do need to touch on a couple of the bigger names. So first things first, this is just going to be in order on Pride of Detroit's free agency tracker. Teddy Bridgewater, he is the backup quarterback once again after a year in Tampa. He comes back to Detroit. Isaiah Pacheco, he comes in from the Kansas City Chiefs, and he will be not your David Montgomery replacement per se, because he's not going to replace the role, but he is the RB2 for this year, and he'll be a short yardage power back that sometimes gives Jahmyr Gibbs a break, but it is the Gibbs show from now on. Greg Dortch comes in as a Khalif Raymond replacement, both as a punt returner and a potential wide receiver 4. Tyler Conklin comes in as a potential tight end 2. He's going to compete with Brock Wright for snaps there. Cade Mays is the only non-one-year deal the Lions made, a 3-year, $25 million deal. He is your new starting center. The other day, the Lions signed Ben Barch, a backup guard. They signed Larry Borum to a 1-year deal. He's a swing tackle who can start in a pinch. We'll talk about that later. DJ Wanham is the Lions' new edge 3, I guess. He's kind of that Davenport / Josh Pascal replacement that is more of an early down run defender. The Lions also brought in oft-injured Peyton Turner in a true Marcus Davenport replacement because you got to have an early down guy that gets hurt all the time, I guess. So Peyton Turner's in. Damone Clark gets brought in as kind of the Grant Stewart special teams linebacker replacement. Roger McCreary gets brought in as your Amik Robertson replacement as the nickel, and then Christian Izien is kind of that safety nickel hybrid. He'll compete with McCreary for snaps as well, and he offers some more safety depth. And then the Lions obviously also acquired Juice Scruggs in the David Montgomery trade. He will probably be your backup center. So the big one of that group is obviously Cade Mays, who is immediately, this is no slight to Graham Glasgow, but Graham Glasgow just isn't a center. So Cade Mays coming in, he is immediately an upgrade at center. The pass protection should get a little bit better, and he is best in kind of the gap run blocking schemes that the Lions run. So there should be a bit of a fit. He's not perfect. That's why he got a 3-year, $25 million deal, and why a Tyler Linderbaum got more per year than Mays is making on the entire contract. But it at least brings some stability to the position, and he fits the Lions window in terms of his age. He's entering his prime right now. So in theory, that should be an upgrade on center, but obviously the offensive line is far from complete. Because Larry Borum, for as fine as he is, he's fine as like a below average starter, but also a potentially really good backup swing tackle. He's not the answer, right? He's not the answer. He's also only on a 1-year deal, but he's not the answer. And left tackle, or just tackle in general, because the Lions could move Sewell over to left. Tackle remains one of the biggest needs on this roster, arguably the biggest need heading into the draft. And in the draft, the Lions have the 17th overall pick, and at this point, it seems like a slam dunk that they are going to draft a tackle unless there's a massive run at the top of the draft, because there are a number of round 1 caliber tackles, and you would think the Lions would be one of the teams that needs to grab one. It's very rare in the Brad Holmes era, like that the Lions are drafting for need instead of just want. It doesn't really line up like that all the time. Obviously, the corner thing a few years ago before they grabbed Terrion and Ennis Rakestraw was a thing. They were like, they need to draft a corner, they need to draft a corner. And we'll talk about the Brad Holmes aspect of this later, but the Lions did eventually draft a corner. But this is the first time that it's like they can't afford to not draft a tackle in the first 2 rounds. And with the way that tackles in the draft go, in round 1, it's very rare that a non-first round tackle is like good. So yeah, the Lions are probably going to have to draft a tackle at 17th. I have some names that I think the Lions are going to be really interested in, but we'll talk about that more in the weeks leading up to the draft. But left tackle, if tackle in general, I'm just saying left tackle because Sewell's been on the right for so long, but tackle in general is like priority number 1 in the draft. And it's kind of weird that that's the situation the Lions are in. But the whole Taylor Decker saga played out, and there's more coming out about that every day. Justin Rogers just did a fantastic story on that detailed Taylor Decker's side of the story, where he's like, the Lions didn't call me. They didn't really check in with me at all. It was very cold, business-like instead of what you would expect for a 10-year vet. But that's the offensive line. Now, the other one that people are up in arms about, and this is where a lot of the frustration comes, is edge. And I totally understand, and I share some of the frustrations as well. The Lions bring in DJ Wanham, who is more of a run defender, and he's not really an edge 2. He's more of that early down, like edge 3 guy that's going to help on first down, maybe second down, set the edge well, and defend the run well. But he's not that great of a pass rusher. He's fine, but he's not exactly what you were hoping for in a secondary edge player opposite Aiden Hutchinson. Because when we talk about the need at edge, it's not a run defender first. Well, it was, but it's the pass rush. The pass rush is the number 1 thing the Lions have to address this offseason, or on defense at least. And that's something that's still kind of unresolved. And this kind of gets into the Lions' philosophy and just how they're approaching this offseason. It feels like this is a back to basics type of season. Like the 2026, like the calendar year of 2026 is about the Lions getting back to basics. And what are basics for them? They want to dominate the trenches on offense, and they want to stop the run on defense and force opposing teams into third and long situations. And we saw down the stretch last year, especially after Brian Branch got hurt, that the run defense died. It just died down the stretch. That Steelers game sticks out as just the most egregious thing I've ever seen in my life. The Steelers, who at the time going into that game against the Lions were averaging like 3.8, 3.9 yards a carry, and they were relatively low. They were one of the worst or least explosive run games in the league, and they were just popping off 40-yard runs, 50-yard runs, and the Lions couldn't stop a thing. It was completely embarrassing, and the Lions, they need to get back to stopping the run effectively on defense. And it's shocking how bad the Lions were at defending the run, considering they run a 4-3/5-2 front as their base, where Derek Barnes as the Sam lines up on the line of scrimmage a lot. And you would think with a 4-3 front, you would be better at stopping the run compared to nickel teams, like teams that run nickel as their base. Nope. The run defense was horrible down the stretch last year, aside from Jack Campbell, who was obviously a first-team All-Pro, and he had like the highest run defense grade in the PFF era. Like, he was absolutely spectacular as a run defender, and he's arguably the best run-defending linebacker in football. But he's only one guy, and outside of him, the Lions were really bad at it. Now, obviously, Ali McNeil having more time coming off of the torn ACL. He came in late last year, or halfway through the season last year, and he was not great. You expect him to be closer to 100% and to contribute at a higher level. Tyleik Williams was solid, but you want him to take a step as well, especially considering he will probably be the starting nose tackle this year now that Roy Lopez and DJ Reader are gone, although DJ Reader is still a free agent, so that remains to be seen. Maybe he's back in the fold. Hutchinson, I talked last year a lot about how aggressively he was crashing in on some of these plays, and he wasn't doing a great job of setting the edge. He was not as good against the run as he usually is. It was a little bit better down the stretch, but that's an area where you need Hutch to step up a little bit. And then edge 2, there was nothing, because the plan was a combination of Josh Paschal and Marcus Davenport. Josh Paschal did not play a snap, and Marcus Davenport, when he was on the field, was just kind of okay, and so that left the Lions in a bit of a weird position. So now you bring DJ Wanham in, and in theory, Wanham is going to help with those early downs and help set the Lions up for some pass rushing opportunities, and that's where Hutchinson and blank other edge rusher would be in the fold there, and you need another edge rusher. You need a pass rusher of some kind, and then you need a Lee McNeil to also step up as well and be a bit more of a pass rushing threat this season. And then another need, this is another weird saga that played out, but you need a will linebacker because Alex Anzalone is no longer in the fold. Malcolm Rodriguez got brought back in, and as of now, he's, I guess, penciled in as the starter because they don't have anyone else. Rodrigo's more of a special teamer, so he's good depth, but you don't want him starting. So the Lions are also going to need someone that's more of a pass coverage linebacker because what they've got right now isn't really that. Campbell's okay in coverage. Barnes is not great at all in coverage, so you got to get someone else in the fold. But those are the big three needs, right? Tackle, edge, will linebacker going into the draft. And safety is a maybe because we still don't know the health status of Kirby Joseph. Brian Branch is coming off an Achilles. He'll probably miss the first couple of games of the season, be back sometime in October, but you don't know how effective he's going to be coming off of a torn Achilles that is notorious for zapping players' athletic ability. So we'll see how that goes. So you might need another safety in the fold. Avonte Maddox is still unsigned. Why is he still unsigned? Bring Avonte Maddox back, please. You maybe want another outside corner. There's this whole Terrion Arnold legal situation that's playing out. I'm not going to really talk about that aside from it's happening, and we'll just have to see what plays out. But another outside corner might be something you want to have because you have DJ Reed, Terrion, and Rock Yassin, who that's a good group of three. You maybe want another. We'll see. If Ennis Rakestraw is more of a nickel, then you probably want a fourth outside corner. But if not, maybe you put Rakestraw on the outside. I don't know. We'll see. You also maybe want another wide receiver. Dortch can be a good wide receiver for. Tesla is obviously the 3 at this point, but you maybe want another body that's more of like a good receiver instead of just a special teamer as well. And then potentially another running back, although this is a horrible draft class for running backs, so I don't really know about that one. We'll see. But Pacheco is only on a 1-year deal, so that remains to be seen as well. But that brings us to one Brad Holmes, and this is where people are a little torn online about how they feel about Brad Holmes. Now, Brad Holmes had an interview with the Lions Collective. If you guys don't know, Lions Collective YouTube channel, there's a couple of Lions reporters on there. Go watch that. Those guys are incredible. They interviewed Brad Holmes, and Holmes talked about the financial constraints of this free agency period, and that's why the Lions couldn't really do anything at edge, because they knew they wanted to invest in the offensive line with Cade Mays, and they got Borum in as well, which those guys cost money, and that kind of limited their ability to do much of anything else, especially at edge. They bring in Wanham because he kind of fit what they wanted in terms of the run defense, and he was affordable, but obviously more has to be done. But now people are like, well, you could have done this and you could have done this and you should trade for Max Crosby and you should do that. Like, there are a lot of things that people want the Lions to do, and part of this is like a Detroit sport fan, not psychosis, but like Detroit sports fans really want a splashy move. Like, that's clear across all of their teams. Like, this is just across Detroit sports at this point. Fans of Detroit-based teams want big moves to happen, especially that's the sentiment in Detroit itself. They want big moves to happen, and I get it. Big moves are exciting. But this is where the divide happens, is because you have the one section of the fan base that's like, you have to maximize your chance to win a Super Bowl with this young core while you can. And then you have the Brad Holmes angle, which is, we're going to get as many kicks of the can at this as possible. We want to build a sustainable program that is good for a number of years so that we have as many opportunities at the playoffs as humanly possible. And while that sounds great, and it is a philosophy that I like, I'm not going to say like I fully share, because I do understand the idea of like going for it when you really have a good team, but that is the way the Lions are approaching it, and that's great. But it requires patience, and patience is something that sports fans in general are in short supply of nowadays. No one has any patience to see this thing through. So there's just a divide online with people wanting the big splashy move. They want the Max Crosby. They want the like whatever, right? Like, they want to be the talk of the town. They want to do what the Packers did last season with getting Micah Parsons and being the talk of the town for, well, the entire season. And if Micah Parsons didn't get hurt, he was probably going to win Defensive Player of the Year because of just narratives. So Lions fans are just a little cranky right now, and obviously that can be offset with a good draft. If the Lions get a tackle and get an edge defender with their first 2 picks, a lot of people will shut up and a lot of people will be like, okay, this is a good team. And for what it's worth, I am of the mind that if the Lions do get a tackle and another edge defender, mainly like a pass rushing edge in the draft, the Lions are probably back to like decent, not maybe not full contender status, but they should be pretty darn close depending on how good their coaching hires were this offseason and what defensive adjustments they make as well. Like, in theory, this is still a very good roster. It's just going a little bit differently than I think people want at this point. And obviously, they're coming off a very disappointing year. A lot of fan favorite veterans have been let go. David Montgomery's gone. Taylor Decker's gone, right? So people are just a little testy with the team right now and with this regime. The vibes in Detroit are very weird, and people don't remember this is a very, very good team, guys. Like, the talent that we have is very, like, we have an elite young core, and 9-8 is the floor now. And I feel like people are forgetting that, but that's just one of those things. And I guess the other thing too is when you have a good young core and you're like a good team, which people forget that the Lions are, at least they have a good core. Like, they are a good team. Again, 9-8 is the floor now. That was a disappointing season. Look how far we've come in the last 4 years. Good teams don't spend money in free agency. You look at all the biggest spenders in free agency, the Titans, the Raiders, like, bad teams, guys. Bad teams. I don't think people fully realize that free agency is where the bad teams spend money to make up for the talent discrepancies compared to the good teams. So you look at the NFC North, the Vikings and Packers also basically did nothing in free agency, right? Like, the Packers were offloading contracts like Rashawn Gary because that was what they had to do because they made the Micah Parsons trade. So Gary became expendable and they had to get his money off the books. Right? It's that kind of thing. The Vikings, their big move was getting Kyler Murray on a vet minimum deal. They gave him like no money. Like, guys, your NFC North rivals are also doing nothing. So it's not a case of like, oh, the Lions, it's a failure because they didn't spend money. No, that's just what the position that they're in now, because they have to pay their young stars and they will have to continue to draft well. And that is where some concerns can creep up, because obviously Brad Holmes has a good drafting history, but the last couple of years, it hasn't been as good. So with the 17th overall pick, you've got to hit on a good tackle. Like, you've got to hit on a legitimately really solid tackle at 17, and that will solidify your offensive line for the next couple of years. And then the Lions can get back to doing what they love to do on offense, which is control the trenches, control time of possession, and set Jared Goff up for the play action as well. So that's just where they stand right now. So that's going to be it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I know this was a lot more like ranty opinion kind of stuff, but let me know down in the comments what you're thinking of the Lions roster right now, like how you're feeling about it and their needs and what you would like to see them do in the draft, or if there's any free agents still available you would want the Lions to take a look at. I'd love to hear from you, so be sure to go ahead and comment that below. And again, I'm sorry that I took such a long hiatus. That was not planned. I just kind of got busy, and so yeah, but my goal is at least to have one video per week leading up to the draft. We will have some draft content coming out soon. So again, hit like, hit subscribe, ring that notification bell so you don't miss any future uploads. And I will see you next time, my friends. Cheers.